The San Jose Sharks expansion way back in 1991 may offer us a blueprint on how the A's could remain in Oakland while Las Vegas still receives its very own MLB franchise. There are a number of things baseball should do differently than what eventually took place in the world of hockey, but the spirit and basics of the arrangement are worth investigating. A while back, we looked at NHL relocations, which indirectly led me to the curious case of the Minnesota North Stars and San Jose Sharks. It was a chapter of hockey history I didn't really know much about. That's because the details had been unsurprisingly omitted from my beloved 20th Century Hockey Chronicles book. By the way, that wasn't the only thing missing from it. The book I had received from my parents did not contain most of the years in the 1950s. That's because it turns out they bought it at the Folsom factory outlets and it was a misprint, but I still read that thing religiously growing up. Let's start by addressing the elephant in the room. Minnesota would eventually move to Dallas a few years later. That had nothing to do with this agreement though. It was mostly Norm Green somehow finagling and weaseling his way into becoming majority owner of the franchise. He should have never been in that position in the first place, but that's a whole other story. Back to the Sharks. In the late 1980s, owners George and Gordon Gunn wanted to move the Minnesota North Stars to the Bay Area. That didn't make a heck of a lot of sense considering the brothers were responsible for the region's last NHL franchise, the California Golden Seals, moving a decade or so earlier. This desire to relocate put the NHL in a difficult position. First, the league was already considering expansion, and having the North Stars move to the Bay Area would remove a potential market opportunity. Second, not having a hockey team in Minnesota is just dumb. Like, that is the sports heartland. That is where you want to have a hockey team in America. The Guns eventually petitioned the NHL to move the North Stars to the Bay Area, but that was vetoed by the rest of the NHL's owners. The Guns eventually petitioned the NHL to move the North Stars to the Bay Area, where a new arena was being built in San Jose. That, however, was vetoed by the rest of the league's owners. Eventually, the Guns and the NHL came together and worked towards finding an amicable solution. When the dust settled, the brothers would sell the Minnesota North Stars to Howard Baldwin, the former owner of the Hartford Whalers, and a partner for $38.1 million. The Guns were then awarded an expansion franchise in San Jose for $45 million. Now there are a couple of things we do need to note. For starters, things on the Minnesota side of this equation did not go as planned, and for more information on that, you can check out the video in the upper right hand corner of your screen right now. There were also a bunch of shenanigans surrounding the expansion draft and the Sharks taking a bunch of North Star players and poaching some front office staff. It was just a really messy situation. So messy, in fact, that the NHL has actually kept hidden all of the details surrounding the Minnesota North Stars being sold and the Guns getting an expansion franchise and how these two are intersected. I have looked and tried to find details of it, and no one seems to know what exactly this all entailed. And for purposes of this video, none of it should be duplicated when it comes to keeping the A's in Oakland. How exactly does the San Jose Sharks expansion serve as a blueprint for keeping the A's in Oakland? Well, many of the components that led to the complicated North Star Sharks agreement can be found just up the road on I-880 right now. You have a town that wants to keep its baseball team, an owner desperate to leave, and a new market waiting for a franchise. Let's make a deal here, people. Everything begins with John Fisher being told by other owners and Rob Manfred and whoever else that he can go to Las Vegas, but only after the Oakland A's have been sold. This is a perfectly fair and a reasonable outcome for him, by the way. You could argue it's actually better for him given just how terrible the trust fund baby has made his current franchise. With the groundwork for that laid out, MLB approved buyers committed to a new stadium project and keeping the A's in Oakland are then invited to bid for the franchise. This, by the way, should be clearly stated in any purchase agreement, and that is something the Minnesota North Stars failed to do. Their new owners had no plans for an arena in hand, nor were they bound to stay in the state. Obviously, that was a mistake, as we all know by now. From here, it is up to John Fisher to figure things out. He can sell the A's and take up the option for an expansion franchise in Las Vegas. He can do nothing at all. The ball is entirely in his court at this point. Just make sure that the option to acquire the new expansion franchise has a date it must be exercised before being open to other bidders, because given how slowly and poorly Fisher does work, he would just sit on it for decades. As you can see in this scenario though, everyone has the potential to get what they want. Oakland is obviously able to keep a hold of the Athletics. MLB and MLB owners will get to divvy up an expansion fee while keeping its antitrust exemption intact, at least for the time being. And of course, John Fisher can sulk off to Las Vegas with an expansion franchise and the ability to peddle off more scam charter schools or do whatever it is he wants to do in life. Can anyone think of a legitimate reason this wouldn't work? No owner is forced out or required to do something they don't want to do. Everyone wins, assuming Fisher is actually capable of selling the A's and has enough money for the Las Vegas expansion franchise in a stadium. That remains to be seen, however. The biggest concern most likely involves the number of teams. 31, of course, would be an odd number of teams. The solution here, though, is not all that difficult. Either add a second expansion franchise to one of the any number of cities wanting a baseball team, or simply operate with 31 teams. The NFL, NHL, and NBA have all had an odd number of teams at various points in history. A baseball club taking 3 days off is no worse than a football team having a bye during week 1. That was a very real thing that happened, by the way. Ultimately, solutions exist for all parties involved in this Oakland A's relocation saga to come out with what they want. By the way, this isn't some kumbaya, pie in the sky hypothetical that requires mountains to be moved. This is something that actually happened about 37 miles down the road. So yes, absolutely, the San Jose Sharks NHL expansion could be used as a blueprint to keep the A's in Oakland. Of course, it involves awful people coming to their senses and not acting like a bunch of greedy asshats for once. The only kumbaya, pie in the sky hypothetical here is Rob Manfred and John Fisher doing the right thing. But as Yogi Berra always said, it ain't over until it's over. Speaking of over, this video, it's over as well. That does it for me. I'm Cheyenne Hollis. This is the Touchback. Subscribe if you would like. And as always, hashtag take it up to the 25.